Hey guys, are you taking the ACT soon and wondering how you can maximize your score and pack in every tip you can? If so, we're going to go through 10 of my top tips for the ACT all in this video. If you haven't already, I recommend that you subscribe to our channel by clicking subscribe below this video. You can also check out even more of my tips for the ACT, on which I've scored perfectly as an adult and coached a student to a perfect 36, as well as other students to 36s on every single section of the test. And you can do that by going to supertutortv.com and checking out the best ACT prep course ever. It's over 50 hours of video tutoring. We've modeled it like private tutoring, so you get all of the awesome knowledge that I give my students. And the other thing that I will announce is if you happen to also be taking the SAT, we're going to be coming out with the best SAT prep course ever this coming fall. So join our mailing list at supertutortv.com/subscribe so that you can keep in the loop. Now, let's get into this video. What I'm going to do first is give a tip that works for all sections. And then I'm going to give you guys some tips for all of the individual sections of the test. My first tip is watch your time. I think all of you know that the ACT is a super time-intensive test. It's really hard to do in the time allotted, even though the questions seem easy. So in order to watch your time, one of the things that you can do, in addition to always making sure that you have a watch that doesn't beep, is that you can go out of order when you do passages on the science and reading sections in particular of the ACT. What that means in the reading section is that you can do whatever makes you least comfortable last, for example. If you're getting below a 32, I recommend that as a great strategy, because if you're not scoring above a 32, most of the time you're losing points probably on a particular section that you really struggle with. So if you're struggling with that section already, what a better thing than to put last where you're running out of time and rushing, because then you're gonna have overlap between the questions that you missed because you were rushing and the questions that you would have missed anyway. Lots of different strategies you can do with timing. That's one strategy. There's more out there, but I'm gonna move on for now to the science. When it comes to watching your time in the science section, one tip that a lot of tutors give is to do the conflicting viewpoints last. That section typically involves the multiple opinions of students or multiple opinions of scientists. Basically, that section isn't about charts and graphs. It's about reading paragraphs. So some people say you should do that last. My second tip, I'm going to now move into the science section. Rather than do the sections in order, I'm going to do them in reverse order. So we're going to start with the science section. My first tip for the science section is that graphs are your friends. So go there first and don't worry about reading too much. And it's that simple. If you need answers to science questions, go to the graph. That's like the first place to go 70, 80% of the time. The more refined you get in your process of understanding the ACT, the more likely you're going to know exactly where to go depending on what kind of question it is. But if you don't have that kind of nuance or you haven't done that much practice, just go to the graphs and go to the charts first. It doesn't mean the answer will always be there, but it is the fastest thing to look at. And my second tip also has to do with charts and graphs, and that is always read your headings. One of the biggest mistakes that I see students make on the ACT, they lose stupid points, is that they don't read every label on their graph. A lot of times people assume that if it says look at figure 1, that figure 1 has both axes that they want, or that if the bottom says time, then the top says density. That's not necessarily true. It might not be giving you what you need, so make sure you read it. And if it's not what you need, then you need to find the connection between whatever the heck it says and what you need, okay? Next tip, tip number 4, we're gonna transition to the reading section. Actively read or skim the passage, but summaries matter more than details. So I know I may have talked about a passage map in some of my other videos, but a passage map is essentially the idea that you know where stuff is. You do not get bonus points for reading every word perfectly of any reading section, but you do get points for getting questions right. That means the most important thing to know is 1, what are the main ideas? And 2, where do I go to find details? Because there's no frickin' way I can memorize all of them, okay? Now, if you run out of time on the reading or you know you can't finish the thing on time, you can also skim. That means reading maybe the first sentence and the last sentence, maybe the first and second sentence, depending on how you do it. You might actually find that even if you don't read every single word of the passage, you can still get a lot of good information and most of all, know where to go back to when you get to each question. I don't recommend going to the questions first, by the way, if you were wondering, because if you do, oftentimes it takes so long to scavenger hunt, you have no idea where to go. So build that passage map, make sure you know the summary of each paragraph, okay? Second idea in the reading that we're gonna talk about, this is tip number 5, is main idea informs detailed answers. So if you don't have enough time to go back and check every answer, and you're going out on a limb and taking a risk, the question I want you to ask yourself is which one of these ideas really dovetails well with the main idea of the passage as a whole. If you know the main idea and the vibe of the passage and the main points, that usually can guide smaller answer choices, or oftentimes it can, so you can guess the right answer even if you're not sure if it's the right answer and you don't have time to verify. So if you don't have time to verify or you're trying to pace yourself, think main idea, okay? Let's move on to math. The first tip that I have for math is what I call the 20-20-20 principle, and that's like a general timing strategy, which is if you want to finish the math and be getting kind of above a 32, general pacing strategy, you probably need to be doing at least the first 30 in 20 minutes, the next 20 in 20 minutes, and the last 10 in 20 minutes. I find that that kind of a general pacing strategy can get you through the test from front to back. One of the mistakes students make that I see is they think, oh, I have a minute of questions. So they pace themselves at a minute of question. And then by the end of the test, somehow they've run out of time and they don't understand why. But the reason why is that the earlier questions are generally easier and much easier to do quickly. So you want to be using speed at the beginning and pushing yourself to move, move, move. I realize you might make some careless errors here and there, but in the grand scheme of things, better to at least have a 50-50 shot at 2 or 3 more questions than get stuck on an easy question doing work that you could have done more quickly. So move, 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 move really quickly, use your calculator if you need it, and go. My next tip for the math, number 2, is remember that your calculator has lots of secrets inside of it that it can share with you. For example, it knows every trigonometric value in the universe. It knows how to graph a quadratic equation and find the zeros. It even knows every logarithm in the world. So if there's any way that you can crunch on your calculator, especially on advanced math questions that have to do with trig or logs, go for it. Remember, if you have variables in the answer choice, you can always make up numbers. I have lots more math hacks that are similar to this point in our math hacks video. So if you haven't watched that, I generally recommend that you check it out because I will go into even more detail on items you can improve on in the math section. Last point in the math section is that you can always kind of guesstimate, especially in the geometry, if you have no idea how to do a problem. A lot of the time you might have like figures or shapes or whatever, and you have no idea how to find a length or how to find an angle, and most of the stuff is to scale on the test. So you can kind of guess if you really have no idea how to do the problem. I don't recommend doing that if you know how to actually do the problem, but if you're running out of time, those might be good ones to guess on and come back after you've finished everything else, or to just guess on if you have no idea how to do them. Finally, we're going to get to the English. So these are tips 9 and 10. Tip 9 is hug your question stems. Question stems. What are those? Those are the piece of your question at the top that ask the question, right? A lot of questions in the English portion of the ACT don't have any question stems. In fact, they're not exactly questions. They're just like problems, and you have to just pick which one is right or which one is best. But a lot of times what happens, students get on autopilot and they think, what's best? What's best? What's best? And then in that autopilot mode, you don't even read the question when there is a question. That can completely screw you over. So just remember, these are not pick the best one. They are answer the question. So hug to that stem, read all the details in it, and make sure you know everything it says and everything it wants. These question stem questions are not about grammar as much as they are answering the question. So answer the question first and foremost, and you will be safe and fine. Cool. Last tip, tip number 10, is if you're studying for the English section, make sure you review your commas, your colons, your dashes, and your semicolons. They are the most missed questions and one of the most frequently asked questions on the ACT. So if there's one area of content I recommend you review right now, if you're taking this test soon, it's those. I'm not going to actually go through all of those right now. I do go through all of them in depth in our best ACT prep course ever. And you can also look things up on the internet if you don't have access to that. But make sure that you know the rules for those particular areas. That's it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. We have lots more videos here at supertutortv.com. I hope you check them out. Thanks for joining us. Check us out on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and all of those fun places on the internet. And I will see you guys next time. Ciao.